All right, so we want to get to $250,000 a month with a high ticket info, consulting or coaching offer. First thing we need, obviously off the rip, is the foundations. And this is pretty self-explanatory, right? So you should know this because you should be in business at least, and have some idea. We've got the niche, we've got the product, and then we've got the offer. Basically, this is pretty straightforward. The niche really kind of comes into three categories. They should have money, they should have pain, and it should be growing. If your niche is shrinking, if your niche doesn't have any painful problems, and if they don't have at least some level of financial resource to invest, you can write off getting to $250K a month, because the only thing that really supports this level of scale is the market. And so if there's no money, if there's no pain, and there's no growth, then you're probably not gonna, you're gonna run into a lot of problems in the market, and it's not gonna work. The second thing is the product. So, at this point in your journey, you should be able to solve a problem. If you haven't got a product that works yet and you can't get people results consistently, then there's no point in looking at this number, and there's no point in trying to get to $250K a month. The whole point of getting to 250 grand a month is this is scale, and we can only scale what already works. And really, if you're thinking about what works from a product perspective, it's the actual result. So do people actually get what you want? It's the speed at which you deliver the result, and it's the retention, which basically means like, are customers actually doing the work? Do they see the point in it? Are they getting results, etc., etc.? If you don't have a solid product, then you shouldn't even be thinking about trying to make more money. You should be thinking about improving the product, because once the product is complete and we've actually got a course or an info business or a set of videos or a bunch of information that works, then you can really scale. Now, here's the thing as well. So one thing I forgot to mention here. So let's say that you're running an agency right now, and you want to transition to info, and you want to go from running a done-for-you social media marketing agency or a done-for-you business, and you want to get into info. Well, what we're going to have to do here is we're going to have to do something called a transition where you need to have made sure your agency is capable of delivering, so that when you create a course around your services, it works. Now, people ask this a lot, where they're like, well, how do I know if I know what I'm doing, if that makes sense? And they ask how do I know if my product is good? At what point, is a product good? What constitutes a good product? Well, to me, it's basically 15 to 30 clients happy. So this is, and I'm measuring happiness based on the simple premise of, are they actually getting results? That's basically what we're looking at here, right? And so until you can comfortably say that you've served 15, 20, 25, 30 people and seen consistent results that happen within the time frame you've promised, and that clients actually get and expect, then you have a good product. Until that has happened, there is no point in trying to learn how to scale, because all you're going to do is scale refunds and disputes. Your Stripe's going to get shut down, your reputation's going to suffer, and things are not going to go well for you at all in the slightest. So the next thing is, once you've got the product, now we can actually start building a solid offer. Because once again, people get this all the time, because when we start talking about offers, we get into the realm of risk reversal. And risk reversal is basically where, you're reversing the risk and you're offering guarantees, you're offering money back. You maybe even go into the red if someone doesn't get results. And a lot of people, they have this problem where they're like, oh, I don't know if I want to guarantee results, and I don't know if I can guarantee results, and therefore I'm not going to. The only thing that really supports scale is a foundation, right? And these are the foundations that we're laying. So imagine, we've got three layers here. We've got layer 1, layer 2, layer 3. And this is the niche, this is the product, this is the offer. And then the scale, or the business, is the house that sits on top. And your house probably looks a little bit better designed than that. But, this is the house. This is the 250K a month scale thing. We've got the roof, blah, blah, blah. Every foundation that you try and strip away, like if we take away the offer, the house now sits on weak foundations. And I see this all the time, where people are like, I don't want to have a guarantee, I don't want to offer risk reversal, I don't think I can promise it in a specific time frame, I don't know if it works. If that's like a poor offer is indicative of a poor product. I am operating under the assumption that you have a decent niche, that you've verified that your product works by having helped more than 15 to 30 people, and in the process of doing so, you have the confidence to have a sick offer and basically make big promises to big businesses, or at least at a big price. So the other foundation that needs to come into effect, we also need to consider, is the price. So when it comes to price, this is a video on how to scale a high ticket offer, right? And so really, this is $5,000 minimum. If you're not charging 5K minimum, then you're in a dark place, because this is really where the high ticket thing begins. Anything below this is sort of mid ticket in my opinion. And the reason that you want to have at least $5,000 is because pretty much for every single customer you sign, you can knock off 25% of this. And this is because of something called lifetime value, right? You should be familiar with the term. This is basically where if you charge 5K, it's probably likely that you're only going to collect 4K on average, because you're going to do payment plans, people are going to refund, people are going to dispute here and there. And so, if we want to collect 4K, we need to charge 5. And the other thing as well is, if you're in the UK, for example, or other certain states, we have to account for maybe 15 to 25% profit tax as well. So if you actually want to stand a chance of making any money, you have to do that. Now, the other thing we have to consider as well is we're also going to have to knock off, 10 to 15% for our sales reps and another 3% for Stripe. So after you consider the sales rep tax, the Stripe tax, the lifetime value drop-off tax, and then any actual tax that you're paying, you're not left with as much as you might think. And this is why we need to bolster our business with large enough prices. Now, some of you might not be in markets that can support a 10 to 20 to 30K ticket, but if your market can't even afford $5,000, then I'm sorry, but the market isn't scalable, at least not with the high ticket model. It is insofar as the fact that you can get to, you can get to 100K a month, maybe 200K a month, but the issue is the whole catalyst of scaling a high ticket business revolves around a sales team, and it revolves around incentives for a sales team. And if you're only charging $3,000 or $2,000, you're going to have to hike up the commission percentage so significantly that you're not going to make enough money to warrant this even being worthwhile. So just thought experiment this out for a second with me here, because I can show you exactly what I do in my company, right? So I charge 10K for my product, for EasyGrow, right? And I pay out 10% commission, which means that each sale on average is probably worth about $800 to my reps after I account that we have an 80% cash collection rate, okay? And what this means is for my rep to be incentivized, this is a pretty big incentive, because if they make 10 sales, they make 8K, they can make 6 figures, which is the kind of expectation that most talented or mid-talent level high ticket sales reps have. If, however, you're only charging $3,000, or something like that, then, and you're trying to, incentivize your sales reps, you can't really only pay them 10%, because they're only going to get paid $300 per sale. And so this is why a high price is imperative, is it's all about the incentives, because what you're going to have to realistically do here is make this like 20%, so they get $600, so they actually have an incentive to push and grow. And what's going to happen is you're never going to attract really good sales talent to take care of your sales calls, because you can't afford to pay them enough. And in order for them to make the same amount as they'd make working for me or another business that charges higher ticket, they have to do double the work, which, trust me, talented people, they are hard workers, but they tend to not enjoy being in some bad places like that. So once you've nailed the niche, and once you've nailed the product, which basically means you've helped more than 15 to 30 people successfully, and once you've got a solid offer in place, which is just risk reversal, and you feel comfortable offering a money back guarantee if the result is not delivered. That is basically the simple premise of the offer, right? And you've also verified that you can charge a high ticket price in the market. Now we have what I would call, the green light to scale. And this is where everything lines up and we are in a good place. So now we can start thinking about the sort of macro business moves that you need to make in order to basically accomplish this. So I'm assuming now, like I just said, that you're in a market that is growing, that has pain and money. You have a product that works, and you've created a program or a course or some sort of method to deliver this information to your market. You're charging a high ticket price, and you have risk reversal in place, and you verified everything. So what we need to do now is basically you need to become, and you're not going to like this, you need to become a full-time sales rep. The point of this is that in order for you to get to this goal over here, you need to isolate the highest leverage activity. And really, in order for you to get to 250K a month, we first need to get to 100K a month. And the point is that we don't want to get to 250K a month or 100K a month and not make any money. Because, a lot of people try and do this where they run ads or they hire sales reps way too early. the thing is we need to be at these points here, the 100K a month or 250K a month with margin. So what this means is basically if you're making 100K a month with an info business, realistically, you should be on 85% profit margins. And if you're making 250K a month with an info business, realistically, you should be on at least 70% plus margins. And the problem here is people, they make too many hires, they overcomplicate the business, they bring in too much staff, they start running ads. We need to learn to do this organically and slowly so that, we actually have a good base to scale from, because a lot of you are going to want to go on to do 500K a month or $1 million a month. So what is really important is we learn how to run businesses at a smaller scale profitably first, so we can then move on and, make a ton of money in the future. Now, to put this into perspective, I can give you my profit margins at these different levels. So when I was making 100K a month, my margins were, and this is not a joke, quite literally around 90%. And the reason this is because I didn't really have any team members. It was me doing all the sales calls. It was my business partner and myself generating all of our appointments. And we didn't really pay anyone to do anything. We had a course, we had some softwares, and that was literally it. Now, when I was making 250K a month, my margins were, I think, about 75 to 80%. So these are the things you want to gun for. And now I make about 800K a month, right? And sometimes we even clip 900 to $1 million. And at this point, our margins are 50%. And so the point here is that if you can't figure out how to accomplish these ridiculously high margins here at the smaller level, as soon as you get to these sort of big boy regions where you're doing 8 figures, if you don't know how to be profitable at a small level, then you're just going to end up at 8 figures, and you'll be making 800K a month, sure, but you might only be keeping like 20% or 15%, which is hilarious, because what you'd keep at 8 figures is probably the same amount as what you'd keep at 100K a month, with way less headache and way less staff and way less problems, right? So profitability is kind of an important thing to bear in mind before we move forward and scale. But like I said, the premise, the sort of the first secret to getting to this 250K a month mark is you need to be doing all the sales calls. And really it's about focus. So basically all you should be doing all day, every day is sales calls. Now, eventually you're going to want to hire sales reps and you're going to want to start increasing reps. And what I can tell you is, in this high ticket world, for every single sales rep you add, you should usually add about 80 to 100K a month in new revenue. That won't be cash, but it will be new revenue, if that makes sense. And so, in terms of the 250K a month mark, the 100K a month, basically it should just be you. And you should be conducting all the sales calls, and your business structure should be incredibly simple, where, it's basically you. And then, you're sort of in the middle here as the founder of the business. And then maybe we have 2 appointment setters, which is kind of pretty typical to fill up, one calendar, maybe doing 8-9 calls a day. And then, maybe you have a client success manager for your program, and maybe you have an ops assistant. This is the business structure that I followed at the 100K a month mark. So what I had 2 people who were filling my calendar. I had an outbound setter and I had an email setter. And these guys, they were responsible for feeding me appointments. Then I had a client success manager, or it wasn't actually a client success manager, but it was someone helping clients. So someone who would basically come in, they were just overseeing the community, and I was still doing coaching calls and stuff for the community, but they were there. And then we had an operations assistant, which was basically someone who helped me manage all the finances and all of this stuff, right? And with this structure and with this model, I was literally keeping 90% of everything I made. And it's pretty straightforward and it's pretty simple, because the 100K a month mark, we can do some maths here, and we can do some maths real quick. So let's say that you're charging $10,000, right? You know that, on average, you're probably going to collect about $7,000 with a 70% collection rate. And that's kind of the margin that you want to give yourself, industry average, based on what I've seen, having helped nearly probably over 1,000 high ticket consultants at this point. So if we want to make, let's say we want to make 200K a month, what we can do is this is pretty straightforward then, because what we can do is we can do 200 divided by 7,000, and obviously maths excluded, right? We can account for this probably being roughly 20 clients. And what this works out to be is, if you're working Monday to Friday, then all we need to do is sign 1 client per day on this 10K price point to, on average, collect $7,000 over the course of the payment plans as they come in and as we move forward. It's really simple. We just need to try and get a client a day. So to get a client a day, let's just say that your conversion rate is like, I don't know, we can be pessimistic here and even say that your conversion rate is like 20%. Now, until your conversion rate, your personal conversion rate is 30%, you should not hire a sales rep. And we'll talk about that in a second. But if your conversion rate is 20%, then what that means is you need to conduct 5 calls per day in order for you to get a client a day, because 20% of 5 is 1. And so really getting to 200K a month with that price point in this model revolves around just conducting 5 calls a day. But the thing we need to account for is show up rate. What I can tell you, industry average, the best you're probably going to get in this space is a 60 to 70% show rate. So I'm going to basically assume a 70% show up rate here. What this means is if we get a 70% show up rate, what we need is we typically are going to need about 8 calls a day booked for us to actually get these 5 to show up. That is it. Okay? It is that simple. If you charge a high ticket price and you do the calls yourself and you have a very small team of appointment setters booking these calls in for you and you have a 70% show rate and a 20% sales conversion rate, then you can get to 100 to 200K a month with a probably 85 to 90% profit margin. And it's not as complex as you might think. It really is straightforward. And basically, it then becomes a question of hiring reps to do this for you, because you don't want to be doing sales calls forever. You're not going to want to, be in your calendar, taking these sales calls for the rest of your life, right? So what we look to do here is we look to bring on sales reps. But the only thing that you should be looking out for to hire a sales rep is for you to have a 30% sales conversion rate. Because if you're not able to convert it 30%, then you're not going to be able to train people to close on your product. And also a 30% sales conversion rate from the owner is indicative that the price works, that the model works, that the clients work, and the market works, etc., etc. And so this thing here, this 30% sales conversion rate, this is the goal. And this is the sort of green light. And you should do sales calls yourself until you've accomplished this over a span of hundreds and hundreds of calls. And so I got a client right now who is making about 50K a month. He wants to get to 200K a month. And his sales conversion rate is 30%. And I said to him, okay, well, we need to get you fully booked. So he's going to hire some appointment setters and do some emails and stuff and get fully booked. And after a couple of months, then he'll bring on his first sales rep. And so the key thing here is you need to know how to transition into a sales rep, right? So let's say that this is you here, and over here you've got your first sales rep, right? Sales rep number 1. You alone right now, let's say that you're closing 100K a month in business, which is, if you're not able to do that, then you don't qualify for a sales rep. If you can't get to 7 figures by yourself with a very small team of outbound people and maybe a little bit of support from a client perspective and operations perspective, you don't deserve to go any further, right? And the only thing that will be bottlenecking you here is your SCR, which is your sales conversion rate, or your show up rate. And so if you cannot, achieve yourself a 30% sales conversion rate or a 70% show rate, then there's no point in hiring a rep, because A, you haven't validated the market, and B, the rep isn't going to have enough shows and they're just going to quit and leave, and it's not going to be good for anyone, right? Let's say that you're doing this. Let's say that you basically have your calendar over here like this, and let's say that your calendar is overflowed, where you've got 8 appointments a day coming in and you're fully booked and you're conducting appointments. Now, what we need to do is we need to onboard this sales rep to take these calls without jeopardizing the business. And this is imperative, because the last thing you want to do is get to this point where you're making 7 or multi-7 figures yourself with all this lovely margin, and then onboard a rep only for them to mess it up and for you to lose all of your money, which happens all the time consistently. So the way we do this is we basically do a gentle transition. And what this looks like is the following. So you have your calendar here, and you are doing 8 to 9 calls a day, maybe 10 calls a day, and you're closing. What we want to do is we want to create something called spill. And spill is where what you do is you bring on a rep, like sales rep number 1. You still run your calendar, but because you're fully booked, and you should be fully booked, and if you're not fully booked, then you shouldn't hire a sales rep. Once you're fully booked, what starts to happen is you create spill. And so this is where, if we have your calendar here, let's just say this is your calendar and there's calls in here and things are happening. But the thing is this is at capacity, right? So it cannot take any more. And then, you come into this and you have a rep, and this rep has 100 capacity. So you have 0 capacity for more calls, and the rep has 100% capacity. So what you do on your Calendly or your scheduling software is you retain priority which means that you still get all of the calls and all the appointments. But when you're fully booked, or if you're fully booked at times that people want to book, then what starts to happen is a couple of calls get siphoned over into the other rep. And so at the beginning, for the first month or two of any new rep hire, you want to basically have them on a half calendar so you can verify that they can actually close. Because what's going to happen when you try and hire your first sales rep is you're going to assume that everyone's good at closing. It's not true. I can tell you right now that probably only 10% of high ticket sales reps that you're looking to hire actually are capable and talented enough to convert at a decent level. And what I can tell you as well is any rep that you bring on will convert half as good as you. It's called the owner's effect. It's the owner's conviction effect, right? Where this is why you need to be at 30%, because the rep needs to see that it's possible. And I can pretty much guarantee every single time they're going to fall short of your number by 50 to 60% pretty much all the time. So you can expect a rep to convert at 15 to 20%. That's absolutely fine. They're never going to do as well as you. That's just the price we pay for efficiency. But what you do is you create this spillover where you are closing fully, you're doing well, and then, the rep, you just spill it over. You watch them for like maybe 30, 60 days. You're still doing the calls yourself. You're training them. And basically what's going to happen here, after a while, you're going to find a rep, you might have to cycle through a few of them, you're going to find a rep that actually does quite well and is actually capable of closing and making money. And at that point, what you do is you bring them in full time. And this should really, you'll know within basically 30 to 60 days if this happens or not. And so what we're looking to do is verify rep number 1. Now, this is where we basically repeat the exact same process again, but with rep number 2. And so, here we have rep 1. And, you're going to come to this point now where if you've been fully booked before and rep number 1 has taken the spill, now, as soon as you've verified rep number 1 closes properly and does the job, then they're going to start spilling over as well, because you're going to need another calendar. So this is when you hire rep 2. And what we do is we repeat the exact same process here, where we take rep 1's calendar, which is now at this point, fully booked and chock-a-block, and we bring on rep 2 to handle the spill. So the cool thing is that between rep 1 and rep 2, you don't need to ramp up your sales volume in terms of your appointment flow, because you can keep the same amount of appointment flow and use the same amount of input to basically drive the same amount of output. If rep 1 is fully booked and rep 2 isn't, then we're going to have this spill effect. And what you're going to do is you're going to have rep 2 come on for 30 to 60 days on a part-time calendar. And once you can see that they've conducted about 100 calls and their conversion rate is within KPI, which is basically like 15% minimum, right? Then what you can do is you can start to ramp sales volume. And then what you do is guess again, right? So if we want to keep scaling, it's all about bringing on more sales reps. And so we want to bring on, rep 3, like so. And, at this point, you should have rep 2 and rep 1 fully booked. And then what you do is you increase your sales volume, you hire more appointment setters, you send more cold emails into a system that's already working, and then we bring rep 3 in. And then guess what? We start having more spill. And so this is how I've hired sales reps consistently over the last few years, and this has gotten me to 8 figures. The huge mistake that people make is they hire reps too early, or they try and outsource all of the sales immediately when they don't take responsibility. It kind of sucks to do the sales thing yourself for such a long period of time. And trust me, I wholeheartedly understand that, because I did the sales calls myself for the business for like 9 months. But the whole reason I did that is when I brought on sales reps, I had like 100 recordings, like 1 call perfect closes that I could show them. And by spilling it over, I kept my revenue consistent, and eventually I found a rep that was capable of closing at like 20%, gave him all the calls, brought on rep 2, the spillover came, and that basically happened, right? And so once you've done this, it's pretty straightforward to understand how to grow these businesses, right? It's about appointments, it's about reps, and it's about product. And so, this is really straightforward, right? So, in terms of appointments, you need a predictable, consistent machine to fill calendars. And, really to do this, you're either going to use ads, you're going to use outbound, or you're going to use inbound. And if you're smart, you're going to use all 3 of them in conjunction. And that's literally what we do for our business. We run YouTube ads and Meta ads. We have a team of outbound appointment setters, and we have my inbound personal brand. And by having all 3 of these, you cover all grounds, and it works really well. Then what you're going to do is you're going to have like a little army of sales reps. Generally speaking, like a sales rep should convert within a KPI of 15%. And what you want to do with a sales rep is you want to have a minimum standard, which means that if they fall below the 15%, then they get fired. Now, you also want to have a minimum unit and cash level. So over the course of a 2-month period, if a rep's average unit in cash and conversion rate is below the level that you deem satisfactory, then they get fired and they get removed. This is the only way to hold reps accountable to performance, is to mandate it that they lose their job if they don't perform within the KPIs you want. So in my business right now, reps have to close 12 units a month, $36,000 upfront cash, and convert it at 15% conversion rate. And what happens is if they don't achieve that over a 1 month period, then if they don't achieve that over the next month period, so let's say that in January, if they don't achieve 15%, 36K, 12 units, then they enter the danger zone for February, which means the month that follows, if they do not close at that point with that cash, with those units, then they either get demoted to setter or we fire them altogether. And I've had to do that a couple of times, but this is a great way of keeping them on their toes. And more importantly, it's a great way for just growing the business and keeping the reps accountable, because reps can get very complacent because they're making like six figures, multi-six figures. They got to keep them on their toes. And then for the product, you need to have less than 5% refund rate. So people ask a lot, like, how do I measure if my product's good or not? Like, how do I measure results? Well, obviously, like, you can get a pretty good grasp of results and reputation and stuff, but you shouldn't bother trying to scale if you haven't got a 5%. If you've got more than a 5% refund rate, Stripe is going to get shut down. Your banks are going to end up getting shut down. Your reputation is going to be in the bin. People are going to hate you, and it's really not good. So the health of an info business, really the heartbeat of the business, the most important metric possible above these marketing metrics, is the refund rate, or at least the dispute rate, because that's indicative of everything to come. And if you try and scale into a crap product, then, well, you're going to be in a pretty dark place. And so what I wanted to do is sort of give you an idea as to what your team structure is going to look like, right? For any stage. So here we have you, and you are the founder of the business, and you're, eventually going to be responsible mainly for a couple of things, which is marketing, the sales team, and the product. Because remember, there's only really three things for you to manage in your business, and that is the generation of appointments, the conversion of those appointments into clients through your sales team, and making sure that your product is good. If you're working on anything that is not generating appointments, helping reps convert those appointments, or improving and developing your product, you're not working on anything at all. Unless, of course, there's some accounting or some legal stuff that has to happen, or some operations stuff, like, we can put down here ops, but generally that can be outsourced pretty effectively. Really, all you're going to have over here, if you're running a sub 300K a month coaching company, like I'm talking, you're not running ads at this point, which means there's no media buyers. Really, all you're going to have is people like this. So you're going to have one person here, one person here, one person here. And these are the reps. So you have rep 1, rep 2, and rep 3. Now, the reps, you need to try and book them, they should each have like 8 calls a day. And what this means is you need to find a way to basically, in essence, if you've got 3 reps, is generate 25 calls a day. Every rep you have, you are responsible for filling them with 8 appointments a day minimum, right? Now, you don't really want to go above that because they burn out, they get weird and stressed. So you want to have 25 calls per day coming in, or, let's say you've only got 2 reps, it's 16 calls. If you've only got 1 rep, obviously it's 8 calls, but we're filling over. And, the latest rep that's been hired should have this spillover effect where they're on a half calendar, and, rep 1 and rep 2 are getting priority, but rep number 3 here, once they've proven themselves, they can enter the same level playing field. Now, what you can do is typically what you're going to need for every rep you have, and I found this to be a pretty good rule, you're going to need 2 setters, because, if we sort of do the math here, like, these guys are machines. They're doing outbound appointment setting, inbound appointment setting, cold email, cold calling, whatever, right? And these guys, until you run ads, the lifeblood of your business is the army you hire to feed the appointments. And so, if you need 25 calls a day, and we have six sales reps, right? Then typically, that's going to be, what is that? That's like 6 times 4. So that's like 24. So you can pretty much rely on each setter to generate around 4 appointments a day. If a setter isn't capable of generating 4 appointments a day, then they're not doing enough volume. And this is pretty self-explanatory, because, if they're sending like 100 messages a day and making 100 approaches, they should be able to get an appointment booking rate of roughly like 3 to 4%. And if they're not, then they're either not doing enough volume, or they're just not good enough, or they're not following up. And so the structure of your business becomes impeccably simple. All it really is the setters sending calls to the reps, and the reps sending calls to the product, and the product getting the results. And then you use those results to get more things. So if we replace you here for a second, so what we're going to do is we're going to build a little inverse flow and say, this is how it works. So product. So what happens is your setters over here, you can see, send traffic to your reps here, and your reps send traffic to your product. And your product is responsible for converting the clients into people who get results. And then what you do is, from these clients that get results, is you take these results and you send the results to the setters, so they can then send more traffic to the reps, and then the reps can send more clients to here. And this is how we create this sort of flywheel between acquisition and delivery. And so this is the thing that gets you to that multi-7, 8-figure mark, is it's when you have your product and you have your acquisition. And what happens is your acquisition feeds your product. And, would you know it, your product feeds your acquisition through results. Basically, the more clients you get, the more results you get. This is why, and no one talks about this, the most important thing is the product, because your entire objective with getting to multi-7 or 8 figures is building this flywheel, building this feedback loop between signing clients and getting results, and using those results to get more clients. And by getting more clients, you get more results. And this thing just goes bang, bang, bang. And before you know it, you're making 200, 300, 400 grand a month profit without doing any work, because the business is so solid, because this flywheel is so good. But the problem is everyone focuses on acquisition, and everyone gets so shiny on, how do I get more clients? How do I get more appointments? But the truth is that, you've probably signed a couple of clients before, but those clients haven't got results. And so what that means is acquisition is something that just happens and gets easier with time. At the beginning, it's really tough and it's really tricky to get clients. I understand that. But if you sign people, 10, 15, 20, 30 people into your product, and acquisition still isn't easy for you, then that's a sign that your product sucks. Because if I sign 10 people through my product, I know that like 6, 7, 8 of them are going to get insane results and send testimonials and video interviews and stuff, which I can then use to acquire more customers, to acquire more results, and it just flywheels and it goes round and round. And that's because, my business has been a product first business, and I spend more time and money on my product than I do on acquisition. And so that's really the main lesson I wanted to teach you today, to get to that sort of multi-7, 250K a month, 8-figure mark, is it's all about the product. And if you nail that, it's kind of it's hard to get clients in the beginning, but if you sign 5 clients and 4 of them crush it and get exactly what they want, now getting appointments becomes 4 times easier, quite literally. And if you just keep repeating that, before you know it, you've got 100 times leverage and you'll make a ton of money. So that's everything. See you in the next video.